The northern wind howled like a living beast, carrying snow across the jagged cliffs of the frozen lands. Forests lay in silence, except for the occasional crack of ice underfoot or the distant howl of a lone wolf. The sun had long disappeared behind gray clouds, leaving the world in a gray twilight. It was in this harsh, unforgiving landscape that Ira, a young Omega, wandered alone. Her coat, patched and worn, did little to protect her from the cold. She pulled her cloak tighter and pressed on, her breath steaming in the frigid air. She had long been rejected by her clan, cast out as weak and unworthy. The memory of their scorn still burned in her chest, but she had learned to survive by cunning, speed, and stealth. The pack that rejected her could not take her will to live. Era's sharp ears picked up sounds others might miss, the subtle shift of snow beneath paw, the rustle of branches. She paused, scanning the trees. There was a presence here, one that did not belong. A group of wolves, large, fierce, and carrying the stench of dark magic, moved with precision. They were not ordinary wolves. Their eyes glowed faintly, unnatural in the dim light. Era's heart skipped a beat. They were hunters, and their prey was very small and very precious. Through the trees, she glimpsed them. 3 young wolf pups, struggling and whimpering as the larger wolves circled them. Their silver fur marked them as royal blood, the children of an alpha king. Era's instincts flared. She had been alone, scorned, rejected, but she would not let these innocent lives be destroyed. Without hesitation, she leapt from the cover of the trees, shouting a warning. "Leave them!" Her voice, small but fierce, carried through the frozen forest. The dark wolves snarled and turned, momentarily distracted by the bold intrusion. Era moved swiftly, her own wolf form flickering in the shadows as her latent magic responded to the danger. Her body felt lighter, stronger, as if the cold itself had become her ally. She struck at the nearest dark wolf, her claws sinking into its fur. It yelped in surprise and pain. The others hesitated, uncertain now, as their small advantage vanished. The pups, sensing her protection, huddled closer together. One of them, the smallest, whimpered, trembling not just from fear but from cold. Ira scooped it up, tucking it under her arm, and backed toward the trees. The remaining dark wolves attacked, snapping and growling, but she was faster, darting between shadows and rocks, her heart pounding. Hours seemed to pass in moments. Finally, she found a small clearing near a frozen stream, hidden from view. The pups were safe for now. She set them down, brushing snow from their fur. "You're safe, for now," she whispered, her voice trembling with both fear and relief. The moment of calm was broken by a sound that made her blood run cold. A deep, commanding growl. From the tree line emerged a figure larger than any wolf she had ever seen. Not a wolf, though his transformation shimmered at the edges of his form. Tall, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and piercing ice-blue eyes, he moved with the authority of a king. His presence alone could make lesser wolves cower. Ragnar, Alpha King of the Northern Packs, had arrived. "You dare touch my children?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous, carrying both anger and incredulity. Era shrank back, holding the pups close. I couldn't let them die," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Ragnar's eyes narrowed. He was a man of laws, traditions, and unshakable authority. An Omega like her, a rejected one at that, had no place interfering with the royal bloodline. Yet, as he looked at her, he noticed the fire in her eyes. She did not tremble at him, did not beg. She simply stood her ground, clutching the pups as if her life depended on it, which perhaps it did. "You are reckless," he said, stepping closer. The air seemed to grow colder, more tense, as if the world itself were holding its breath. "Do you understand the danger you have invited?" Era nodded. I understand, she said, but I could not let them die. Ragnar studied her, his mind torn between anger and curiosity. Few had the courage to defy him, and fewer still had the skill to survive against the cursed wolves she had faced. Something in her, some spark, made him uneasy, yet his pride and duty demanded that he assert control. "You have no place here," he said finally. "The pack elders will decide your fate. Come with me." Ira hesitated. Following him could mean imprisonment or death, yet leaving the pups behind was unthinkable. Slowly, she nodded and fell into step behind him, keeping the pups close. The journey back to the royal hall was silent, the tension between them almost tangible. When they arrived, the great hall was a cavernous space of stone and firelight, filled with the murmurs of the pack's elders and warriors. All eyes turned to the intruder Omega holding the royal pups. Whispers ran through the room, some admiring, some skeptical, some openly hostile. Era felt the weight of their scrutiny, but she refused to bow her head. She would not beg. She had survived rejection before, and she would survive this. Ragnar stepped forward, his voice echoing in the hall. "This Omega has interfered with the royal bloodline," he announced. "The elders will decide her place among us." The council was harsh. Voices demanded punishment, claiming she had no right to touch the royal pups. Others, however, argued that her actions had saved them and that strength, not birthright, should determine worth. Era listened in silence, her hand still protecting the smallest pup. Finally, the eldest counselor, a wolf with fur streaked in gray, spoke. "Her presence cannot be ignored," he said. "She carries skill, courage, and something rare. To cast her out now would be folly. She must remain at least until we understand the depth of her power." The hall fell silent. Era's eyes met Ragnar's, and for a moment, the world seemed to shrink to the space between them. He did not speak, but she could feel the weight of his gaze, both assessing and unspoken. Later, when the council had dispersed, Ragnar approached her alone. The hall was empty except for the crackling of the fire. "You saved them," he said quietly, almost reluctantly. "And yet you risked everything." Ira shrugged, her breath still uneven. "I have nothing left to lose," she said. "I have been rejected before. I can survive anything." Ragnar's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained sharp. "You are not like any Omega I have known. You are bold, reckless, brave." "I do what I must," Era replied, "even if no one else will." The tension between them was unspoken but undeniable. Here was a king, a warrior of unmatched strength and authority, and a rejected Omega, small, alone, and yet unbroken. Both understood the rules of power, the dangers of attachment, yet neither could deny the pull that simmered between them. Night fell, and the pups were settled in a warm, protected den. Era sat nearby, keeping watch, her mind restless. She thought of her past, of the clan that had cast her out, and of the strange pull she felt toward Ragnar. He was a figure of authority and danger, yet something in his gaze had unsettled her in a way she had never felt before. Suddenly, the wind outside shifted, carrying a faint, sinister howl. Era's ears pricked. The threat had not vanished. The dark wolves who had attacked the pups were still out there, perhaps waiting, perhaps planning. She glanced toward Ragnar's chambers, knowing he would sense the disturbance as well. He was a protector, an alpha, and yet he had not been able to arrive in time. Era felt a strange resolve settle in her chest. She would not fail again, not the pups, not herself, not even this mysterious king whose presence had begun to haunt her thoughts. Whatever trials lay ahead, she would meet them head-on. In the stillness of the northern night, Ira felt a spark of something long denied to her, purpose, power, and perhaps even destiny. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing clearly. She would not be ignored. As the first stars appeared above the snow-clad mountains, a distant howl echoed through the forests, chilling and filled with malice. Ira's heart raced. The war for the pups and for her own place in this harsh, magical world was only beginning. And in the shadowed hall of the Alpha King, Ragnar stood by the window, his mind troubled. The Omega had survived where others would have fallen, and she had touched something inside him he had long thought dead, a spark of admiration and something more dangerous: desire. The night whispered of storms to come, of battles that would test strength, loyalty, and hearts. And at the center of it all stood Era, the rejected Omega who had saved the royal pups. Soon she would discover that surviving was only the first step, and that destiny, cruel and beautiful, had chosen her for a path she could never have imagined. The morning sun rose weak and pale over the snow-covered cliffs, casting long shadows across the frozen forests. Era had not slept well. Her thoughts were restless. The royal pups stirred in their den, chasing each other in playful tumbles. Their innocence warmed her heart, even as the weight of danger pressed on her shoulders. She knew the dark wolves that had attacked them before were not defeated. They were out there, planning their next strike. Ragnar, Alpha King of the northern packs, entered the den silently. His presence was commanding, yet there was a softness as he observed the pups. He noticed Ira crouched near the smallest one, her hands brushing over its silver fur. "You are relentless," he said, his voice low, almost a growl. Era looked up, meeting his ice-blue eyes. "I cannot fail them," she said simply. "They are innocent. They did nothing to deserve death." Ragnar studied her for a long moment, as though trying to read the lines of her past in her face. Few dared speak to him so openly. Most would have cowered or bowed, but Ira's gaze was unwavering. There was courage in her, and more, an unshakable determination that defied her size, her rank, even her rejected status. "You are unlike any Omega I have met," he admitted. "You are strong and dangerous." Era allowed herself a small smile, though her heart beat faster at the words. Dangerous. She had survived rejection, scorn, and exile. Perhaps now she was more dangerous than she had ever realized. The day was spent preparing the royal pups for training. Era taught them how to sense danger, how to move silently through the forest, and how to respond to the call of the pack. Ragnar observed from a distance, sometimes stepping in to correct a posture or demonstrate strength. They worked in silence at first, but each shared glance, each small touch during corrections, carried attention neither could ignore. Despite her status as a rejected Omega, Era's skills impressed the pups and the Alpha King. She had a gift for understanding the young wolves, for seeing what they needed before they even knew it themselves. The smallest pup, whom she had rescued first, seemed to gravitate toward her, trusting her implicitly. As the day progressed, whispers began to circulate through the royal hall. Warriors and nobles spoke quietly of the Omega who dared interfere with the royal bloodline. Some called her a hero, others a threat. Ira felt their judgment but refused to falter. She had survived rejection before. She could survive their suspicion as well. Ragnar, however, felt a different kind of disturbance. The way she moved, the way she commanded attention without speaking, unsettled him. He had ruled for decades, yet never had he encountered an Omega who challenged his authority so quietly, so subtly. Each day, the tension between them grew, a mixture of irritation, admiration, and something unspoken, something that made the heat rise in his chest despite the cold northern air. Late in the afternoon, a scout arrived, his face pale and eyes wide with fear. "Alpha King," he said, bowing low. "The rival clan. They are massing at the edge of the forest. They know the pups survived. They are coming. Ragnar's expression hardened, a storm behind his gaze. Gather the warriors, he ordered. Era, stay with the pups. Protect them at all costs. Era's heart tightened. She had done it once. She could do it again. But she felt Ragnar's eyes on her, a mixture of concern and something else, something she could not name. I will protect them, she said firmly. Night fell, and the royal hall was alive with preparation. Weapons were sharpened, wards were set, and the pups were moved to a hidden chamber beneath the castle. Era and Ragnar walked the walls together, side by side, though neither spoke much. The wind howled, rattling the wooden shutters and carrying the scent of the enemy. At a sharp cry, the battle began. Shadows moved at the edge of the forest, faster and darker than normal wolves. They struck with precision, but the royal pack was ready. Ragnar led his warriors with the precision of a seasoned alpha, while Era moved like a shadow, slipping between enemy lines, guiding the pups and protecting them with uncanny skill. During the clash, Era's latent magic awakened fully. Snow swirled around her, forming a protective barrier around the pups. The dark wolves recoiled, hissing at the power she wielded. Ragnar watched, a mixture of awe and unease in his eyes. He had known her courage, but he had not expected such raw, untamed power. The battle raged through the night, and in the chaos, Era realized the youngest pup was in danger. A dark wolf had broken through their defenses, moving toward the small one with lethal intent. Era's instincts surged. She darted forward, catching the wolf mid-leap. Her claws tore through its magical wards, and with a burst of strength, she sent it crashing into the snow. The pup whimpered, but was unharmed. Ragnar arrived moments later, his hand resting on her shoulder. You are extraordinary, he said, his voice low. There was no reprimand in his tone, only recognition. Recognition of her courage, her skill, her power. And something more, something that sent a strange warmth through both of them despite the frost in the air. After the battle, the enemy fled, but the danger had not passed. The rival clan would regroup, and they would return stronger. Era sat with the pups, checking them for injuries, while Ragnar stood nearby, watching. You risked yourself again, he said quietly. Why? Era looked up at him, her eyes tired but defiant. Because they cannot defend themselves, she said simply, and because I cannot ignore what is right. Ragnar's gaze softened, but there was still a tension between them, a pull that neither could deny. He had ruled as Alpha King for decades, yet he had never felt such a mixture of respect, admiration, and longing for someone who defied him so completely. The following days were filled with training, strategy, and preparation for the inevitable return of the rival clan. Era and Ragnar continued to clash, both in combat practice and in words. She challenged his authority, questioned his decisions, and pushed the pups to grow stronger, and he, in turn, tested her resolve, her courage, and her loyalty. Yet, in the quiet moments, they began to understand each other. Era saw the loneliness behind Ragnar's strength, the burden of leadership, and the unspoken longing for someone who could stand beside him without fear. Ragnar saw the fire in Era's heart, the strength that belied her small stature, and the unwavering courage that had saved his children. One evening, as the sun dipped below the mountains, casting a crimson glow across the snow, Era and Ragnar stood together on a cliff overlooking the forest. The pups played nearby, their laughter echoing through the frozen trees. You are unlike any Omega I have known, Ragnar said softly. You are not afraid. Not of danger, not of me. Why? Era hesitated, then spoke with a quiet honesty that surprised even her. I have been rejected before. I have known fear, loneliness, and failure. I cannot allow those I care for to suffer the same. And perhaps I am drawn to you because you are the only one who does not see me as weak." Ragnar's eyes met hers, intense and unyielding. For a moment, the wind seemed to pause. The world holding its breath. Neither spoke, yet both understood the unspoken bond forming between them, a mixture of respect, trust, and something deeper, something dangerous. The peace was shattered by a distant howl, sharper and more menacing than before. Ira's ears twitched. "They are coming back," she said, her voice steady despite the chill that ran down her spine. Ragnar's jaw tightened. "Then we prepare, together." The next days passed in a blur of training, strategy, and quiet moments of tension. Era continued to bond with the pups, teaching them not only strength but compassion and courage. Ragnar observed, sometimes joining her in lessons, sometimes watching silently from the shadows. Their interactions were charged, full of unspoken emotion, yet neither fully acknowledged it. During one particularly harsh training session, the eldest pup stumbled, injured by a fall. Era rushed to his side, cradling him in her arms. Ragnar arrived just as she whispered soothing words, her hands steady despite the biting wind. "You care for them as if they were your own," he said, his voice soft. There was no accusation, only observation. "And yet, you fear nothing for yourself." Era looked up at him, meeting his gaze. "Because they are innocent. And because I cannot turn away." Ragnar studied her for a long moment, seeing the truth in her eyes. In that moment, the walls between them, though unspoken, began to shift. The respect he had felt for her courage began to mingle with something more primal, more dangerous, something that both of them would soon have to confront. The night fell again, colder and darker than before. Era sat beside the pups in their hidden chamber, keeping watch while Ragnar patrolled the outer walls. The wind carried distant howls, and the forest seemed alive with anticipation. Era's mind wandered to the future, the battles yet to come, the rival clans' inevitable return, and the strange bond forming between herself and the Alpha King. She did not yet understand what it meant, but she knew that survival alone would not be enough. She would have to fight for more, for the pups, for the pack, and perhaps for a place beside Ragnar that no one had thought possible. And as the northern lights shimmered across the sky, painting the snow in colors of green and blue, Era felt a spark of hope. She had survived rejection, exile, and danger. Now she would survive what was coming next. And perhaps, in the process, find something she had never dared to hope for, a place to belong, and a heart to call her own. The northern night was alive with shadows. Snow swirled across the cliffs and forests, driven by a cold wind that cut like steel. Era stood at the edge of the royal hall, watching the horizon. Her breath formed clouds in the air, and her hands rested on the hilt of a small dagger. Beside her, the royal pups trembled, but they trusted her. They had learned courage from her, and now they would need every ounce of it. Ragnar emerged from the shadows, his presence immense and commanding. His silver hair glinted in the light of the northern aurora, and his ice-blue eyes reflected both concern and resolve. He placed a hand lightly on Era's shoulder, a gesture that was both reassurance and unspoken acknowledgement of the bond they had formed. "They are stronger than before," he said quietly, his voice a low rumble. "But the rival clan has grown in number. This night will test us all." Era nodded, her jaw firm. "I will not let them harm the pups, not now, not ever." Ragnar's gaze softened as he looked at her. "You have changed everything," he said. "Even me." The words hung between them, unspoken yet heavy with meaning. Neither could deny the pull that had grown between them over the days and nights of training, strategy, and survival. They had fought side by side, argued and clashed, but through it all, a bond had formed, one that was stronger than fear, stronger than pride. From the tree line, a howl rose, a signal that the rival clan had arrived. Dark shapes moved like shadows across the snow, their glowing eyes reflecting malice. The battle was inevitable. Ragnar drew his sword, its blade gleaming in the moonlight. "Protect the pups," he commanded the warriors, his voice carrying across the frozen plains. "Era, stay close. We fight together." Era nodded, drawing upon the magic that had lain dormant within her for so long. Snow swirled at her feet, forming protective barriers and blinding mists. The pups huddled behind her, their eyes wide with awe and fear. She had taught them to trust, and now they needed that trust more than ever. The first wave of enemies struck. Dark wolves, larger and more twisted than any natural beast, charged with ferocity. Ragnar met them head-on, his sword flashing, his movements precise and lethal. The royal warriors followed his lead, defending the line with strength and skill. Era moved like a shadow through the battlefield, guiding the pups and using her magic to protect them. Her hands traced patterns in the air, and the snow responded, forming barriers, blinding fog, and icy traps that slowed the enemy. Her power had grown stronger with each battle, fueled by her determination and the bond she now shared with Ragnar. Despite the chaos, she caught sight of the youngest pup in danger again. A dark wolf had broken through the defenses, moving toward the small one with deadly intent. Era's heart surged, and she acted without hesitation. She lunged forward, her claws glowing with a faint, ethereal light, and struck the wolf down. The pup whimpered, but was unharmed. Ragnar appeared beside her, his presence steady and commanding. Together, they fought as one, a seamless combination of strength and skill, instinct and strategy. The rival wolves were formidable, but they had not anticipated the unity between the Alpha King and the rejected Omega who had become the pups' protector. Hours passed in the bitter cold, the clash of steel and howls of battle filling the night. Slowly, the enemy began to falter. Era's magic, combined with Ragnar's leadership and the bravery of the royal warriors, turned the tide. The dark wolves retreated into the forest, defeated but not destroyed, their eyes filled with promise of return. When the last of the enemies fled, silence fell across the battlefield. The snow was stained with scars of battle, but the royal pups were safe. Era knelt beside them, brushing snow from their fur. They clung to her, their trust absolute. Ragnar approached, his sword still in hand, his eyes scanning the horizon for any remaining threat. When he saw the pups safe and Era unharmed, his shoulders relaxed slightly. He turned to her, his expression softening. "You saved them again," he said quietly, almost reverently. "And not just them. You saved us all. Your courage, your strength. It is extraordinary." Era looked up at him, her cheeks flushed with cold and exertion. "I did what I had to," she said softly. "I could not let them die. And I could not ignore what is right." Ragnar's eyes held hers, and for the first time he allowed himself to feel the depth of what he was experiencing. Respect had grown into admiration, and admiration into something more powerful, more dangerous. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "You are not like any Omega I have known," he admitted, his voice low. "You are brave, strong, and unafraid. You have changed everything." Era's heart beat faster. She had faced rejection, fear, and exile, and now she stood before the Alpha King, acknowledged and respected. She felt a warmth she had never known, a sense of belonging, and perhaps the stirrings of love. I did not expect this," she said quietly, But I feel like I belong here, with you, and the pups. Ragnar's expression softened further. Then you shall belong, he said. Not as a visitor, not as a servant, but as something more, something vital. For a moment the world seemed to hold its breath. The northern lights shimmered above, casting a magical glow over the snow and ice. The pups watched quietly, sensing the significance of the moment between the two. Era felt a shiver run down her spine, not from the cold, but from the gravity of what was being said. She had been rejected, cast out, and yet here she stood, recognized for her strength, her courage, and her heart. And beside her the Alpha King, the most powerful and revered figure in the North, acknowledged her as equal, not in power alone, but in spirit and bond. The moment was interrupted by a final distant howl. The rival clan had not been completely destroyed. They would return. But now, Ira and Ragnar faced them not as separate entities, but as a united force. Their bond, forged in danger and trust, had become a shield as strong as any sword or magic. In the days that followed, the royal hall celebrated the courage of the pups and the remarkable skill of the rejected Omega who had saved them. Whispers of admiration spread through the pack. Even those who had doubted Ira's worth now saw her strength and her value. Ira continued to train with the pups, her bond with them growing deeper. Ragnar joined her when he could, their interactions no longer just authority and instruction, but moments of quiet connection and understanding. Each glance, each shared effort, strengthened the unspoken bond between them. One evening, as the aurora painted the sky with green and blue, Era and Ragnar stood on a cliff overlooking the forest. The pups played nearby, their laughter echoing across the snow. "You have changed me," Ragnar said quietly. "I have ruled for decades, yet never have I met someone like you, brave, loyal, unyielding, and unafraid of me." Era smiled softly, her breath forming clouds in the cold air. "And you have changed me," she replied. "You have shown me that I can be more than rejected, more than alone. You have shown me a place where I belong." Ragnar stepped closer, closing the distance between them. "Then we belong together," he said, his voice low and certain. "Not just for the pups, not just for the pack, but for us. You have proven yourself, Era. You are more than an Omega. You are my mate." Era felt a warmth spread through her chest, a mixture of relief, joy, and awe. She had survived rejection, exile, and danger, and now she was acknowledged, respected, and loved. She nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes," she whispered, "I am yours." The northern lights shimmered brighter, as if the world itself celebrated the union of the Alpha King and the rejected Omega who had become his mate. The pups gathered around them, sensing the completion of a journey that had begun in danger and uncertainty. In the days that followed, the royal hall was filled with laughter, training, and preparation for the future. The rival clan would return, as all threats eventually do, but the bond between Ragnar and Era had grown unbreakable. Together, they were stronger than any enemy, and their connection inspired the entire pack. Era had transformed from a rejected Omega into a protector, a teacher, and a vital force within the royal pack. Ragnar had learned to embrace vulnerability, trust, and love alongside his authority. Together, they represented a new era for the northern lands, one of courage, loyalty, and unity. And though the snow would fall again and enemies would come, Ira and Ragnar faced the future together, their hearts united, their bond unshakable, and their destiny intertwined. The rejected Omega had become the Alpha King's mate, protector of his pups, and a force to be reckoned with in a world of kings, queens, and supernatural power.